Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. Super excited to be back with you. Another episode with Dr. Rachel Reinhart Taylor. Rachel, my friend, how are you today? What is going on in your world?
Oh, I'm good. There's a lot going on in my world. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about all of it in the podcast. So I'm
Yeah,
good
I'm
though. Thanks.
super excited to have you here. So for context, I asked you to come and be on the show because I was listening to you on a mutual friends podcast, Mental Illness Happy Hour with Paul Gil Martin, and I heard your story and I was like, oh, I've got to have this human being on. Amazing story. Before we kind of jump in and we have the back and forth, just high level, can you kind of tell a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'll start with my professional training. So I have a medical degree in MD from the University of Utah, where I graduated. I started my training in surgery, but because I was a single mom during medical school, I decided surgery was going to be tough. I want to spend time with my daughter. I switched to family medicine and then did rural emergency medicine for a couple of years, and now I did some frontlines work and during the pandemic, and now I'm full time telemedicine from home. So, and I'm board certified in family medicine. And the other aspects are I'm very interested in optimizing people's bodies without medications and supplements and things like that. Although I'm not opposed to them, I'm just very interested in how powerful are we in healing our own bodies and optimizing without before we use other things.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and I think that one of the things that really dawned on me and hearing you on Paul's podcast, why I wanted to come over and have this conversation with you is because, you look at your life and your trajectory of many of the things that have happened and that you've gone through, and for you to come out the other side, I don't wanna say seemingly okay, I think that's, like, dismissive at times, but to really be in this place where you've taken control over your life and you've made it an effort to create energy around the impact of changing other people's lives. And I recognize that in myself. And part of it is our background's very similar. I don't know if you're familiar with the ACE survey or not, Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, but it was done in the mid 90s, and it kind of became this indicative factoring for determining long-term detrimental outcomes for people who suffered childhood trauma. It's a series of 10 questions. I answered yes to all 10 of those questions. And I looked at kind of the thing that you were talking about in your experience of the childhood trauma experiences that you had, being misdiagnosed with bipolar, going through all of these things, and yet still coming out the other side. And so, what I'm really curious, what I'd love to dive in and talk about here to begin with is kind of how in this journey have you been able to be not only so resilient, but to push yourself forward in a way where I think what happens, and this was my experience, we kind of, without asking for help, get really stuck.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think there's absolutely, I think we do really in the childhood trauma. I did read your story online, and you know, I think that well, one of the first things I have to say is one of the things that I think is really creating a lot of divide and a lot of difficulty with asking for help when we're stuck is that we try to talk about differences. So, I was going to say, wow, your childhood trauma was like way worse or whatever than mine. But reality is that we all are dying for connection, and connection is so important for our healing and moving forward and asking for help. But we like to think, well, it's not as bad, or it could have been worse or whatever, and really dismiss ourselves and therefore created a divide. Like, this is how mine was different from yours. Instead of saying, I know how that feels. I think that, when we're focused more on the very physical aspect, well, I didn't have my finger cut off, or I didn't have, or I did have this with you, but I had it in a different way, or I'm a female and you're a male, and I think that we really, take away that ability to say, yeah, but we both know how it feels to feel like no one cares. We both know how it feels to say, I'm not going to ask for help, because every time I ask for help, it things get more difficult. Or, I think that we both, and I think most of the population has the experience of saying I need help to someone who was not good or healthy for us. And they used, I like the phrase, there was a phrase I heard where he said, when you ask for help or when you're vulnerable with somebody, you hand them a loaded weapon, like a gun, basically, metaphorically. I hope not literally. And they can either shoot you with it or use it to protect you. I think that as like a shared human experience, we have all experienced a certain amount of people who use it to shoot us. But in the same vein, I think, as children, you would hope you'd be protected. And I think that really has created a lot of difficulty in asking for help. But, I think most of my life, up until more recently, actually, when I started like slowing down, I didn't think anyone would help me. And that is how I decided I need to both help myself and help everybody else. And, I mean, we have shared experiences in using, using different substances to try to numb away. I think that we do that even sometimes with Western medicine. We're so afraid to feel the feelings that we numb it away, even by over medicating sometimes. And I think that also we have a great emphasis in our society in general on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but there is an alternative called post-traumatic growth. And the post-traumatic growth is kind of, you can it's something you can choose. You can say, wow, this is really awful. This is hard. I got through it. And now I'm going to use this experience to show other people and to inspire and to make things better for them.
Yeah, and that's I found that in my experience that I fell into that accidentally. I mean, there is no way where I look at my life and go, "This was my trajectory." I as a kid, the only thing I ever wanted to do was not die, right? That was it. That was my whole goal. That was my whole mission. Make it to 18, and then I don't really know what's going to happen. And then so it put me on this crazy trajectory where by my mid 20s, my life was fully enveloped in chaos. And then I started going down this path of trying to take care of myself, trying to be better, trying to do all the things. And by proxy, by accident, by divine intervention, whatever that means, I somehow fell in this place of being of service. And I think that's all in part of the growth that came in that, because I looked at it and I said, well, shit, if I can make it through this, then there's got to be a way for other people to. One of the things that we have in common is that we both grew up Mormon, and our experiences, while very different, still have a lot of very similar parallels. Not only that, but and it depends on how deep you want to go and how far you choose to take this conversation. Looking at a very interesting parallel around abuse and around trying to really go for these things in life that aren't necessarily the most healthy and coming out the other side. What I'm curious about, because and this isn't to make a point to go like beat up religion or anything like that, but I know that there are other people listening to this right now who have had religious trauma. And I know that's something that's very new society. And I know that somebody's going to email me and be like, go fuck yourself. How dare you talk about religion? And I'm okay with that. So I step into that willingly. What I'm curious about is, can you talk about your experience in growing up religious, and then the pivot from moving into where you are in life now, and how that's played a role in your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny, and maybe someone will email me and tell me to go fuck myself too, based on this religious discussion. But so I'm just gonna say, I think that religion originally had the right idea. Like the original principles are like, we're supposed to love other people, and we're supposed to, be kind to our neighbors, and we're supposed to, do kind things and acts of service and blah, blah, blah. And then I think that human beings get a hold of those principles and then they make them very much about control and keeping someone else out, or saying you can marry someone, but only if they're the same religion as you. And I actually remember, when I was on one of the reservations, I was very, very, very interested in learning from the medicine men if they would teach me. And I did learn. There was one that was talking about it, and he was saying, you know, he says the white man, and then eventually said, there are some people, some populations that take these like beautiful things and they like pervert them and make them into something now that is used to flog and guilt and to say I look better than this person, or I'm worse or better than this person. And what I have come to find is that if you ever get in this place where you're just trying to look better than everyone else, you're isolating. And not only that, a lot of times you're starting to kind of hide, like in my experience, we were hiding the angry outbursts and trying to pretend that everything was fine in the family, and we never talked about it because it was fine. We just needed to pray more, or go to church more, and my mom needed to be more subservient to my stepdad. And it really, I think, creates this environment of, if you aren't like the Joneses, then something's wrong with you. And if it's religion, you're not doing enough religion, basically. But I grew up Mormon, as you mentioned, and when I was 13, that only took me 13 years to figure it out. I was watching this guy talk, and he was like, I loved my friends so much, I wanted to share the church, is what they call it, there, of course, the Mormon church, with him. And I thought to myself, don't we say that God just like loves everybody no matter who they are? And if that's so, then why does it matter what religion people are? I think that it really is very individual, based on how you want to go about becoming the best version of yourself. So, I practiced a type of Buddhism called Nichiren Buddhism for a few years when I was in residency. And that was also beautiful, based on everyone being equal. But there was still that aspect of, but you get extra blessings if you convert people. So, and then I always said, even if you say I'm Mormon or I'm Christian or whatever, there's always an aspect that you are kind of tinkering with, like the rules on your own. No one's really any one religion. There's always some sort of customizing to it. So why are we trying to pretend like we're something perfectly, when what happens is we're trying to suppress so badly what we perceive as our flaws, and then those flaws get bigger and bigger and bigger because we're trying to hide them, and then we take them out on our kids or our neighbors, or we hate groups of people that don't deserve to be hated. So not that any group of people deserves to be hated, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that a big part of it is when, and my experience with it growing up was kind of, at church you're one person, and then at home you're a different person. And I found that to hold true for a lot of people who've had drastic religious trauma. Whereas, at church everyone's buttoned up and clean cut and good to go, but at home you're getting beat and locked in closets and molested, and who knows what's happening. And that was very much my experience. And coming through it, I remember one day I was sitting there, and the bishop, who was like, if you don't know this, the leader of a specific church, was talking. And I just had this really interesting moment of insight, and I was like, wait a second, I bet that dude like beats his kids. And that was the moment for me. And I'm not saying he did or didn't, and I certainly don't want to be dismissive of that. But, I was like, wait a second, that to me feels like a really interesting misnomer that's not being addressed here, because it's like, follow the 10 commandments, be honest, be kind, be all of these things, except when you're everywhere else but church. And that pushed me into this place of wanting to kind of go into what's next. When you're having this experience, and having it at a younger age than most, right? And I think that there are people listening who may be having that experience right now. How did you start to navigate that? Like, what was it that became, because it's such a part of identity, right? I think that's where I'm going with this. It's such a part of who you are. If you're Mormon, people often go, oh, I'm Mormon. By the way, I'm also Michael, right? It's always like a precursor to everything. So
Yeah.
in that, for you, like, how did you start to navigate the shift?
That's an interesting. I really like this question. I haven't really. So, my mom would get pretty mad at us. I don't know if you did early morning seminary, but we did it where we were supposed to go to church classes every morning from like 5 to 6 a.m. before high school. And I kind of just started ditching it and things like that. And Um, I think really I kind of held on. So I ended up skipping 2 grades, and I think my passion or my push to be kind of done with school, I think was in part because I wanted to be out of the house I was in. So I kind of just held on because I started college when I was 16. And then when I actually moved to Utah, where my dad lived from California, and actually in Utah, I kind of liked being that. And I think this is maybe because I was still a teenager. I liked being that rebellious. I'm not Mormon, whatever. And in Utah, they call us Jack Mormons. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I kind of liked that. I liked the rebellion of it all. It was a little difficult with my family. I did come back and end up marrying a Mormon guy when I was 19. A lot of it, in a sense, to please my family, and then realize, oh my God, my family doesn't give a shit. Like, this hasn't gained like unending approval from my parents. Why did I do this? Um, so, I don't think, I think it really is. Um, It really is, and I'm finding this in my life. It really was kind of just saying, "This is who I am. This is just it." That like you can hate me, you cannot like me, but the only person I'm not going to betray now is myself. I'm not gonna, and just like you were talking about, I'm not gonna pretend to be happy in one place and then go home and have my parents scream at me, or I was sexually assaulted when I was young. I'm not gonna pretend like that didn't happen. It goes back again to that, the more we're pretending, the more walls we're up, the more we're being divided from everyone else. And I've actually, had a lot of friends that were Mormon and then decided, they kind of felt the same. It felt very oppressive. I think especially for women. And now that women are like, oh, we don't have to, I think one of the words is, one of the phrases they use is like serve your man or be, I don't remember. The man is supposed to be like a beacon in the home, and you're supposed to serve him. And this is all. I'm a doctor now. Like I don't need someone to serve. I want to. I and I think that for me, it mostly was women who I've really encouraged and talked to in any religion, and just said, well, I mean, does following these rules feel right to you? And no, okay. Why are we following these rules? And again, I think that when we're dividing what we look like, at church versus, at home or at school versus whatever, every time you do that, you're dividing yourself. You're losing your power. You're trying to become something you're not. And that, I mean, this might sound really, kind of ridiculous, but everyone has a very unique and talented personality and gifts that we all need. So the more you spend trying to be like Joe, or the more I try to be like Michael, there's less Rachel in the world. Like, and that really comes with, I wouldn't say like self-love. I think self-love is this grand thing, people are trying to accomplish, but this comes with this little choosing yourself every day. When I'm tired, when I'm super exhausted and I don't want to go out and meet people or whatever, I just don't. I mean, I'm not perfect about it, but it's really just deciding I'm not gonna be someone else for someone else to feel comfortable. And it even goes to talking about things like sexual assault and rape and being, abused in the household and all of these things. The more afraid we are to talk about it, especially with me as being a doctor, if I'm afraid to ask someone if they've been sexually assaulted, like patients know. There are several mechanisms by which people pick up how you're actually feeling, and we can discuss the science of that ad nauseum. And really, this is like, if I'm sending signals to someone that it's not okay to talk about this, or it's not okay to be a certain way, if I'm uncomfortable with myself, then this person sees this is not okay, and this is not a safe place. And I think, both of us are really, I don't know you super well, Michael, but from what I've seen, we both really want to be a safe place for people. So I really think the navigating, it starts with little, just little, like, okay, I'm gonna choose, like, I'm gonna decide that I don't believe that I should, pray 300 times a day or whatever. I'm gonna choose that little choice. I don't think that's something I have to do for my own spiritual connection. So I think it's just this little, it's little by little. I think that, especially me lately, for several reasons, I've been very impatient, with wanting things to come to fruition and just be this magical thing and easy. And it's just you choosing little pieces.
Yeah, that's very beautifully said, and I'm in agreement with you. And I think so much of it, this applies, in my opinion, to everything in your life, is to follow your instincts, follow your gut, trust it, do the things you want to do, and don't do the things you don't want to do. And one of the most difficult aspects of that, and I think that's where you really start to understand who you are, is in that scope of the space of being who you are. And that's what's really difficult about it, is until you get to that place, you don't know that it's possible. But the only way that you can get there is you do the little things day in and day out. And sometimes that means not going to seminary at 5 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes that means, I grew up a Mormon Boy Scout. That meant not going to Boy Scouts, all of these things. And that doesn't apply only to religion. And I know somebody's going to sit here and listen and be like, you guys are beating up on religion. That's not what we're doing. But we're talking about choices. We're talking about decisions. We're talking about what it means to really take ownership of your life. I think it would be missed to not talk about this idea that PTSD or CPTSD, when we start to have these traumatic experiences in childhood, start to impact our DNA. And I know that you know about this, and I want to dive into this because I want to also create some very practical conversation here for people listening around the education and the science of this. Can you talk about the methylation process of DNA in consideration of PTSD and how that's passed down generation to generation? And for people who just got super lost, please, I know Rachel's going to explain that in depth, so hang with us here.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm such a nerd about science. So everyone get ready to see like ultimate nerd over here. Okay. So one thing that is really kind of amazing that has been now proven, especially in veterans, which sadly is an easy group to study in the sense that you can take blood samples before war and after war and see how their DNA has changed, if at all. Because unfortunately, we know that war is kind of a tried and true place where people come back with PTSD. So there's been a lot of studies, verifying that they have what's called methylation of DNA. Like you mentioned, this is just a carbon group, a simple carbon group that is, or a methyl group is what it's called. That's then put onto the DNA. Depends on where it's put on the DNA, what it will create or not create, basically. So, this is this is what I really love to talk about is, people think that I know we might get this later, but the mind body, there's a strong connection. I say strong connection. I even say the same thing. When you're seeing something traumatic, witnessing something traumatic, that creates that PTSD, which then in your body creates a change in your DNA. It's not just, oh, and I get a lot of this, you're not just like some weakling who can't pull out of it. Like your DNA is literally changed. Your body is changed. They've done a lot of looking for different medicines. There's different IVs, infusions and stuff trying to reverse this methylation of the DNA. And so far, I don't know of anything that actually can successfully do that. However, there are some amazing studies on mice that are showing early promise. They say, these mice have the methylation of DNA or a DNA change, what's called a DNA change. And they have what's called a quote carefree adult life. And it starts to reverse this methylation. And, I talk about this in my book, like, okay, we all kind of laugh, like, yeah, I'm never going to have a carefree adult life. But really what it is kind of that change, like, okay, I may not be able to help that I'm getting divorced, for example, but I can reframe it as a detour. I can teach myself how to believe that even these bad things I mentioned before we started recording, I had a small stroke in February, um, for various reasons, but I have to reframe. I mean, it was really, really hard. I had to believe that there was a reason. I had to take this detour because for some reason it's going to end up, making me stronger or better to do X, Y, and Z. So the whole idea is that DNA change is early. It's early in research, but it's possible that it starts reversing itself if we can kind of reframe, kind of find ways to roll with the punches more so versus saying, my life is horrible, this is happening. We need to really, that's the kind of thing I love teaching people. And then as far as transgenerational, they're finding a lot of the same DNA changes in parents and children. And a more recent study showed, I believe, up to 7 generations as they're finding that DNA change. So, then you can, put this out into bigger populations. If I think that we think, well, if a mom is raped, then their child's more likely to be raped, and that's true. But even if that doesn't happen to their child, they may carry that same kind of DNA change, which may translate to the same fears, the same PTSD without experiencing that. And if you think back to why maybe this would be good evolutionarily, you can imagine if you are, on the plains and you see a tiger eat a man, then your DNA changes, watch out for tigers. But it's become, I think, very haywire in the society in which we live now. And, there are ways to reverse this that we're working on. And I have successfully, I mean, I have not changed, like, looked at the DNA, but I've successfully helped people understand, people that don't want to talk about their problems. I've helped them understand that their body is making that change, and it's not just in their head something they're going to work out. It's something that needs, like, we need to take an active approach to creating this environment that does feel more carefree for you, because life's gonna life. It's just gonna happen either way. So we gotta find ways that feel more carefree, and we can hopefully, and that DNA, by the way, twists tighter. In some cases, it's harder to replicate. You age faster. I mean, there's just so many different implications for that.
When you're in this place of trying to step into a carefree life, um, and trust me when I say it's not lost on me how incredibly difficult that is. I'm always trying to do that. I think that there are inherent stressors carried in my DNA that I can point and pinpoint, not only to being, half African, West Nigerian, but half Irish, and carrying that church, homelessness, poverty, all those things. So here I am in my life heading into the second half almost, and looking at it and going, well, how the hell do you have a less stressed and more carefree life? Are there some, like, in what I would call incredibly practical ways that you think that as trauma survivors, people can step into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a bleeding heart. I am also very Irish, as you might be able to tell from the little my ginger hair and my very pale skin. So the idea is that we can make these changes without, my ideal is to make all of these changes kind of without medications or supplements or things that are not available to the populations that need help the most, really. So I have a bleeding heart, and it started, I have a bleeding heart for underserved populations. So it really came to my attention that while medical missions are amazing, I love doing the medical work. Sometimes, you'll give medications, and They don't have follow-up. They don't have another doctor. They have no way to get the medication again. There's no ride. This is what also repeated, when I was working on reservations here, in our own country. There's so many populations that just don't have a money to pay for it, which I don't think is like ridiculous. I had a stroke and was furloughed from work, and I couldn't afford therapy and stuff at that time. So, and through medical school, I mean, I was on, Medicare, or sorry, Medicaid and all of that. So it's not absurd to think that literally any of us could at any point in our lives not have access to these things that cost so much money, including, therapy and, like I said, Western medicine, all of that. So I really, really, really have become interested, in the last, it's probably been now 12 years since my first medical mission. I'm so interested in how can populations, what does the science say about how populations can optimize their own health without needing someone else's help, like basically without spending money. So there are a few things. So I don't know if you're familiar with neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is when we can create new neuron connections in our brain, or new connections in our brains. And a lot of times this might happen with injuries. So, for example, I had that little stroke, and I had the opportunity to kind of rebuild that. And actually, when people exercise any kind of cardio, it increases their ability to kind of remodel their brain, that neuroplasticity. And then there are other things. There are certain types of meditation, and you can remodel your outlook. Basically, you have to do things that are gonna, I like the word potentiate, but basically tell your brain we're changing now. And then when you're doing those, you have to be very, very, very mindful that you are focusing on the way you want your outlook to become. So there are a few. So as far as neuroplasticity, there's some medication, like there's ketamine is. By the way, I do not endorse using that off the street, but please don't do that. It's very dangerous. But there are like infusion centers that are used, and physicians overlook people who have PTSD and anxiety and depression and things like this to help them literally remodel their brain. There was a Yale study recently that showed psilocybin. That is the like active ingredient in magic mushrooms. Again, exercise caution with this advice, but that does cause your brain to say we're remodeling now. And then again, there's different types of breathing, meditation exercises, and things that there's in meditation you can increase. There's a part of your brainstem that's gray matter that helps you. When you do this meditation, it helps that area develop, and that area is helpful in controlling emotions and making decisions in high stress situations. So, it's not like, well, my life sucked and now I'm fucked forever. It's like, okay, look, the science is showing that you can remodel this and you can fix it. And then if you change that, if you use your neuroplasticity to change your outlook, then your life starts feeling more carefree. You can see things. I can see my stroke as a detour to get to a place where my life is going to be better, instead of, oh, this was the worst thing ever. I hate, I'm screwed forever. What if I have another one? What if I blah? I hate my life. You have to actively choose that, though, and it is not. I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to choose that all the time. I think I mean, you talk about it all the time. You do every time you make that decision, but you can make that decision, help remodel your brain by meditating, by exercising, and then knowing your brain is in remodel mode. So you're going to choose differently than before. And that's all free and accessible to everybody.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, and so much of this does really start with the way that you're thinking, the way you're talking to yourself, the way that you're allowing yourself to be in the world, and I recognize it's difficult, right? Especially when you're inundated with the ideas that other people have put on you of who you are or who you should be, and then you reiterate that into yourself and into the world, and then suddenly you look at your life and you're like, "How the fuck did I get here?" And it's
Mhm.
a trial by fire to pull yourself out. But you talk about one thing I think is really interesting that I'd love for you to dive into, and I have gotten pushback on this, and so I will preface this and I will say I have gotten quote unquote canceled because of saying this before, and this is the idea that anybody can be healthy if they're willing to do the work,
Yeah.
and I fully believe that. I'm not. And look, I'm not smart. I'm not better than anyone. I don't have any college fucking degrees. Like I didn't even graduate high school on time. I've destroyed my life and built it back up. I believe that it takes the same amount of effort to build your life as it does to destroy your life. And I want to know your thoughts on this because I think that sometimes it helps to come from another voice. But why do you think that anyone can be healthy if they're willing to do the work?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is definitely, I don't, it's hard for doctors to get canceled. I think because they need us so bad. But, I definitely, I'm either essentially loved or hated by my patients. Um, More loved, thank goodness, but sometimes very much hated. And, a lot of this is that same belief, what I just I will tell people, you can get there, you can be healthy if you want to be. And I think that really for me, saying these things, I can back it up with the science. I mean, neuroplasticity, I just told you about. You can lower your blood pressure by meditating every day. Like that's a shown scientific study. You can lower your risk of heart attack and stroke by meditating. And there are certain types of meditation, and these are all studied. Your blood sugar gets better when you meditate. And I get it. Everyone has a reason why they can't, or they're different, or they blah blah blah. But honestly, I've seen a lot of bodies. I treat a lot of patients. I did surgery, ER, and now I'm primary care. There's no body I have seen that I'm like, no, this wouldn't help them. Never, never, ever, ever have I seen that before. I don't care how sick you are. You can improve by doing things, by especially changing your mindset. I mean, it's chronic pain, arthritis. I can literally name 100 diseases that I've worked with and revert. Well, maybe I can't name 100 off the top of my head, but there are lots that I've worked with that I have gotten able to reverse at least in part. This is not, some woo woo whatever. I mean, this is science, and it's all, again, it's in my book. And if anyone needs a book and they can't pay for it, please reach out to me. I'm happy to. We can figure something out. I could probably send you one. But I wrote that book. I wasn't looking to be rich. I wasn't looking to like be super famous. I just that is the book of all of the ways you can be healthy for free that I knew at the time. I know more now too. So I would be shocked if I saw any patient that actually, again, hunkered down and worked with me, that didn't have a reversal of their symptoms. That's just I literally cannot think of any reason why that wouldn't happen. And we can work with it if you're a busy single mom. I get how that is. We can help you if you feel like you don't have the money. That's why I did this for free, accessible to anyone. You can access it from anywhere. Um, you know, I have found ways. I mean, in the book, I talk a lot about when, this patient, a bus driver, he works 12-hour shifts. He's like, I never have time to get up and walk. So we got this thing where he like got off the bus and did like 10 jumping jacks, at every stop. And, it was fun. And, oh, I can't afford to eat healthy. Okay, we're going to do 1 cup of leafy greens, put that in a bag, make 7 bags of those, 7 bags of spinach on Monday. And if you just end up putting it in your mouth and having to chew down the spinach like a rabbit, that's fine. That's how we're going to do it. In this case, blood pressure came down. We reversed his hypertension, got him off of 3 medications. We got, he had a family history of diabetes, which is true, can be a precursor, but that doesn't mean you have to have it. We reversed his. I think he was still on 1 medication, but I mean, we took him off of 2. That's 5 medications he didn't need anymore by making really easy lifestyle changes and really just I think it comes with citing the science and saying, look, here's the deal. This is what will happen. This is what will change in your body when you make these tiny changes. And again, this is not expensive. This is meant on purpose to be free changes.
Yeah. What do you think? And for the sake of time, I won't keep you for too much longer, but you talk, and I love this topic here, and this is why I want to ask this question. You've talked about at length emotional cognition, and I think about this idea about how we mirror each other, how our neurons mirror each other, and how this. I think change is really, really difficult when you're around people who aren't also changing. What are your thoughts on that? How do you navigate that, knowing from a literal biological standpoint, like we reflect our environment?
Yeah, I think you mean emotional contagion.
Yes, thank you.
No worries. Yeah, emotional contagion. So this was a phrase dubbed back in the 70s, I believe, and it came about before we really had a lot of science to back it up. But it kind of was, I think, an observed kind of more in the like psychological realm of observation. So it's like your boss is having a bad day, and he comes in and he's angry, and even if he doesn't say anything, then all of a sudden the whole office is just, everyone's off and not, whatever. So there are several different things that are seen with that I use myself. I research all the things I'm telling you are not like I was taught this specific thing. Like I research at home my own individual way to come up with a solution to this because there's not already a solution in place. If there was, we wouldn't have a problem. So, the things I've seen that can cause issues, and I talk at a lot of physician burnout summits too, because as you might know or not know, physicians actually have the highest suicide rate of any profession. So more than 1 physician a day kills themselves. So I speak on these panels, and a lot of it is so we have a grouping of mirror neurons that will reflect someone back to you. Actually, your brain will light up in a way that is as if you are doing the same thing this other person is doing. So, for example, there were monkeys, and one monkey would watch the other monkey eat, and the same neurons would light up, and he's watching him eat. And then they found that the monkey could tell what the intention was, basically. So if the monkey goes to grab a banana and he decides to then throw it, the other monkey could tell his intention that he was going to throw the banana. And then the next banana, he picks it up and opens it, and then he decides to eat it. And these mirror neurons can reflect what someone's intention is. A lot of people say, oh, this explains telepathy and stuff. It doesn't quite. But it is helping us to understand how connected we are. And all of those stressors and all of the stuff we kind of pick up from other people are, again, it can raise our blood sugar, our blood pressure, all things that migraines, headaches, constipation, not sleeping, insomnia. Like, people don't realize we're not silos. There's also another thing called coherence. We can detect our own electromagnetic fields outside of us. That's what an EKG is our own fields. And these are actually found to be linked with emotion. And you can actually coordinate your electromagnetic field with someone within 18 inches of you. And, so you really need to know how to, all of these things are happening whether you want it to or not. It's not like your conscious control, but you can really learn how to optimize these things. And that's true. You're going to be around a lot of people who are super grouchy. This is why it's really, really important for you to know how your own kind of, body or your energy, feels. However you want to say it, that doesn't sound stigma in a way that you can, absorb it, the information. You need to know how it feels to be in your own body without all these other people around, so that when you're not around the grouchy people or the people who are not having such a good day, you're not just coordinating your body with theirs and just allowing yourself to be then in that mood forever and ever. You need to realize basically it's not yours. But it takes a lot of, it takes some practice. I'm happy to teach anyone, but it takes some practice.
Yeah, and I imagine that with emotional contagion, that it's very much a practice of just awareness, right? That's what I hear. Like, be aware, pay attention to yourself, maybe predicate this whole thing with a little bit of exercise, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of like getting your brain and your body connected. Because often, especially if you've had severe trauma, you're going to be dissociated. You're going to be, living life in la la land, which was my experience for a very long time. So there's practicality in this. Rachel, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I'm sure we could go deeper and deeper and deeper. But before I ask you my last question, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Oh, yeah, just RachelTaylorMD.com. And you can email me, go straight to my personal email. I'll get back to you right away. Just go through the contact form. The booking stuff has been taken down temporarily. I am willing to work with people if they want to work with me, though. But the booking stuff was taken down when I had that little stroke, because I needed time to heal myself, like we were talking about. I needed time to not be hooked into other people's emotions.
Yeah, I totally get that. Trust me. So that said, thank you so much for being here. My last question for you, my friend, is what does it mean to you to be unbroken?
For me, it really is that science of self healing. What I was telling you, like all of this, being unbroken is is not even. It's not even that you were never broken. I think that people have that mistaken. When you cut yourself, you get a scar. The scar is stronger than regular skin. You're stronger. There's also a Japanese form of pottery where when the pottery breaks, they seal the cracks with gold to show like this pottery, how beautiful the cracks, how beautiful the flaws can be. And I think that that really is unbroken to me, is to be someone who's stronger, someone who turns back and gives a hand and says, I've been there before, let me help you out. I think that's unbroken to me.
Beautifully said, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya.